Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you continue to enjoy your meal. We have a real treat for you for our luncheon keynote today. I met this gentleman a few years ago at a conference and was introduced and got to know Mr. Rick Smyer. And he told me about a book that he was writing at that time. And since then, he's finished the book. It is called Preparing for a World That Doesn't Exist Yet. And as a futurist and a very forward-thinking individual, he really has enriched our college and our community already. Rick was the breakfast keynote speaker at last year's conference, and we really planned this conference with, again, thanks to the planning committee, with just tremendous input from folks saying, can you bring him back? We want more. And so Rick talked about the second Enlightenment and characterized his work with communities of the future, but he also has within that framework the idea of a master capacity builder. And this is really the rubber hitting the road of how progress happens collaboratively in our communities. And he's been a consultant, obviously author, and prolific speaker around the United States and the world. And we're really just delighted, Rick, to have you back this year. And I did put a copy of Rick's book on several tables. There should be one on each table. We tried to get enough for each table. So somebody can take that as a little door prize who would like it. I do have a couple of extra copies. If somebody has a burning desire to get one today, they can come up here. Maybe you can twist Rick's arm and get him to sign them if you like. But would you do us proud with a Northeast Tarrant County welcome for our keynote speaker, Mr. Rick Smyer.
It's great to be back. I've developed a lot of friends and colleagues and associates while I'm here. Can you hear me at the back? Okay. And if you kind of just raise your hand and I'll try to get my voice up. That's usually not a problem where I speak with this southern voice of mine. I need to tell you two things for those of you that don't know me, and I'd like to thank Larry Darledge as well as Maggie Delatea, who were my original connections up here. It's been a pleasure to work with Alan and so many other people here at Tarrant County College. And one of the things, for those of you who have never heard me speak or have not, don't know me, is that I tell people I'm 122. That's 74 plus road wear for those of you that can understand the process in terms of learning about life. And then the other thing I tell you is that what you're going to hear from me are opinions. That I absolutely have no truth left in my body. And one of the things that was so important to me about the age of 50-52 was learning how to listen as opposed to then just saying what I thought people needed to hear me say is the old lead or follow idea. And I'm going to take about 30 minutes today to introduce to you and feed on some ideas that I introduced last year when you were nice enough to ask me to come out here. And I've got 15 slides, and I'm going to give you what I call the machine gun approach. We live in an age where we're going to have to be able to respond, adapt, and move more quickly than we ever have. And I was so glad to hear the panel today focus on collaboration, focus on helping each other succeed, talking about the need to look backwards, but not just looking backwards for the purposes of taking the ideas forward, but really rethinking what it is that's going to be needed for the 21st century. So these are just opinions. Nobody can predict what's going to happen 15, 10, even 5 years from now. And so, in my opinion, we're going to need to have a whole different approach of understanding. And I'll suggest to you, starting off, that every few hundred years in Western culture, that we have to reassess, we have to rethink. Can you read that from the back? I doubt it. Can you read it at the back? Okay. Every few hundred years in Western history, there occurs a sharp transformation. Within a few short decades, society rearranges itself. Its worldview, its basic values, its social and political structures, its art, its key institutions. 50 years later, there is a new world. And the people born then cannot even imagine the world in which their grandparents lived. We are currently living through such a transformation. It is creating a post-capitalist society. So what this gets at, and this is Peter Drucker's famous quote, is that we are in a transformation of history, not a reforming change, not one that is in effect going to move back and forth, but actually moving into something that's totally different. And so we're all going to be co-creators together of this new civilization. And it's happened only twice in the past, moving from the age of gathering to the agricultural age, and from the age of agriculture to the industrial age, whatever you want to call it. We call it ecological civilization. Whatever you want to call it. It is a different type of economy, different type of society that is being birthed, and we're just beginning to see some of the early stages and some of the patterns that are beginning to introduce. So I'd like to introduce you to several ideas and then give you some specific suggestions of things that we can do together. Alan mentioned about the idea of a new approach to leadership, not either or. We need project leadership, we need strategic planners, but that's become a 2 or 3 year. It used to be a 40 year. Things move so slowly, you can look out 40 years and just adapt and make things more efficient. We're in an age where we're going to have to create together. We're going to have to co-create together. And so therefore, being able to build capacities for transforming the world and how we think and how our institutions are structured is going to be very key. So I'd like to introduce you some of the thinkers and tie some ideas together. We're living in an age where there are 2 types of change. There's reforming change, where you can take a classroom, make it more efficient, and take standardized tests. You, in fact, reduce class size. You'll increase the capacity of the students to be able to respond and have standardized testing. But it doesn't set you up for the kind of society and economy that we have. And so, therefore, standard anything, one anything, is going to be appropriate for the moment for what you're doing in your classroom, what you're doing as an economic developer. I had the pleasure of serving 13 years as a resident heretic for the National Economic Development Institute as a futurist. And the whole concept of economic development, which I'll get into in a minute, is in the process of transforming. Not just changing, but transforming. So the idea then that change is difficult, but not changing is fatal. Please remember that. I'm glad I found this. Change is really difficult when you get to transforming change. It requires all of us to connect with each other, help each other. But if we don't do it, then we're going to be left standing on the sidelines. So, famous quote, it's not the strongest that survives, it's not the most intelligent that survive, it is those that have the capacity to adapt that will survive. So we're going to learn how to adapt to constantly changing conditions. Einstein has this famous quote about the fact that it's not that you want to make things simpler, it's you want to make them as simple as possible. Now let me give you an example of that. There's a fine woman that I'm just getting to know and having the pleasure of what I call coaching, as I have with a number of the people from TCC, Linda Quinn. And I won't ask her to stand up and embarrass her. But Linda and I had a conversation, and a 2-hour conversation about 6 months ago. And out of that conversation, I gave her some sites to look at, and we had some articles to read. And out of that conversation came an idea that she sent to me a week later. I was expecting to hear from her a month later, and lo and behold, I get this diagram, and there are 4 concentric circles. And I hope I can communicate this, because if I don't, it's my problem. It's certainly not yours. And these 4 concentric circles had what's happening at TCC in the middle circle. It had what was happening with our work across the world in terms of Communities of the Future, 6 key ideas. It had a circle that related to what was happening here at the concept of the arts program here at TCC. And then the 4th circle was a circle that related to how you connected to the community. And each of these circles had different segments in it. And I looked at that, and if this had been 30 years ago, I'd have said that's too complex, as I've had some people say to me. I took it down to Wade Tech, which is a community college, the largest in North Carolina, and a group of 8 people I was working with. I said, what do you think about this? And an English professor, who's quite a leader, said to the group, she said, boy, she said, that's intriguing, but I don't know how I could use that in my classroom. Well, I had some other conversations with other people anticipating that kind of thing, and so I said to her, what if you rotated, got a student to get some software, and you rotated the 4 circles, and that you in turn rotated them in different directions at different rates, and you just randomly stopped it. And that you got the student teams to say, connect those 4 ideas in each of the circles when you stop it. And it'll do 4 things. It will help people learn to think systemically. It will help think about the future in a future's context. It will help connect totally disparate ideas because you're doing it randomly. and it gives you the opportunity to be able to shift and to introduce future projects to build what we call capacity transformation. Now, the reason I bring that up is because that's an example of transformation, and that's, if it emerges, and I'm seeding it, I called Alan and asked if it was okay if I sent it to people, and he graciously said I could. And then I sent it to economic developers, I sent it to some other people, and said, what do you think about this? And an economic developer up in Maine said, I want to take this, and I want to see if I can change the words in it and take it and have economic developers begin to work with this, and I'm going to facilitate it so they can help think about economic development differently, because I want to make it a game. So that type of idea can profoundly change the whole concept of what learning is all about, is the point that I'm making. And it means that therefore make it as simple as possible, but it is totally transformed in the way you think about things. So, Buckminster Fuller had a famous quote, you never change things by fighting the existing realities. Things are changed by creating a new model that makes the old model obsolete. And so that's what I was talking about. That's why I introduced that idea. The whole concept of trying to make efficient what we have is certainly something that we're going to need to continue. And at the same time, in parallel, seed new ideas, develop new approaches that are truly appropriate to what's evolving in the future. So what is evolving in the future? Well, we're shifting into new paradigms. The word paradigm came from a book in 1962 by a famous guy named Thomas Kuhn. And he talked about the fact that we were talking about the new science of the 21st century. And so that, if you can't read that up there, basically this one guy with this just look of just total exasperation and being lost, he says, just between you and me, what is the paradigm, a new paradigm? And the woman who has probably had many different types of new ideas thrown every year to her, she says, at the moment, it mostly involves replacing moving forward with new paradigm. In other words, she's not going to pay any attention to it. But we are in turn thinking about how do we have people shift into totally new ways of thinking if our culture and our economy and our society is truly transforming. So, I'm going to give you 6 ideas. And as you can tell, I'm just trying to whet your appetite, because I intend to be through in 30 minutes. Or maybe 20 from now, huh? And so the idea of the second enlightenment, and this, my presentation is entitled Second Enlightenment. Here's the idea, is that I'll suggest to you that we are in a time period of a significant shift and change in the society, and that the ideas that were birthed 250 years ago are no longer appropriate. They will be for the short run, but we've got to rethink the future in thinking about basic ideas. Let me give you an example of that. We talk about a Declaration of Independence. I'll suggest to you over the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to be shifting and moving in our democracy, in our society and economy, the one that's interdependent. Will we still have independent? Of course. But it's going to be both. It's going to be and both, as we call it in our work. And so therefore, when it's appropriate to be independent, when it's appropriate to, in effect, as an individual, make a statement of your individuality, it's still appropriate. But in the future, the complexity of society and economy and how things, fast things are moving, I'll suggest to you we're going to need each other like we've never had before. I really did like what I heard in the panel this morning about collaboration, not looking to the past for answers, but looking to the past for relevance and coherence and a context and thinking about the future in a different way. So this area out here, I've been impressed since I've been coming at it for the last 3 or 4 years in terms of how your thinking is at the cutting edge and what you're doing to see new ways of thinking. So, the second thought, in terms of we have identified 14 new principles, and I don't have time to go into them, but I'll give you a second one. We're always talking about being able to predict the future. How can you predict something looking out 10 to 15 years, or even 5 years, as I mentioned? And a technique I developed about 20 years or 15 years ago. Think about this. I'm going to ask you to go back to 1985. Whether you're an economic developer, whether you're a community worker, whether you are an whether you are an educator, it's 1985. How would you put the web into your strategic plan for the year 2010? Anybody want to help me with that real quick? I'll make sure that anything you say has value to it, so don't worry about being wrong. That's not a part of my leadership style now. Okay? All right, here it is. I'll tell you a story that makes the point. When I first did it, it was about 1998 up in Indianapolis at the Economic Development Institute. And I asked that question, and two young men raised their hands and did a wonderful job in 3 to 5 minutes each in explaining how they would put the web into their strategic plan. This young woman at the back of 85 people hesitated to raise her hand and jerked it down again. It reminded me of myself in college many years ago at Davidson. And so I picked her. I said, Karen? I said, were you going to say something? She said, well, Mr. Smyer, what year did you say? I said, 1985. She said, sir, I don't believe the web was a concept in 1985, was it? And the only way, and immediately made a point, because in effect, I was trained in strategic planning, and it's still appropriate if you have 1 or 2 years and you have all your factors identified, the money identified, the way you're going to do it, all the support from county commissioners or whomever. But if you're looking out to prepare for a world that doesn't exist yet, then not only is there a new type of leadership that's needed, but a whole new approach to the concept of planning. We call it adaptive planning, where you prepare and build capacities in people to think differently, listen to each other, share, connect with each other. And I always tell people, whereas years ago I used to, in effect, want to let people see my knowledge and let them see me as a leader, I now look to see whether I can find something in anything you say when we are dialoguing together that I agree with. It could be 1%, it could be 10%, 100%, doesn't matter. That's where I connect. Think about it, folks. We're coming from an age where there is one answer to the best problem. That still be the case if you have 2 policies to choose from. But if we're going to create a whole new approach, we need to connect new ideas, people, and processes, don't we? And you don't do that by, in effect, trying to control each other or trying to, in effect, be the leader that has all the answers. A whole different approach to leadership that we're going to talk today. And both are needed depending on the situation. All right. So, creating molecular economy. I'll suggest to you that for the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've been in a time period of transition whereby we have 3 different types of economies that are mixed together. We have the last stage of industrial age, the textile plants I was in charge of as a CEO for years. We have the knowledge economy that was made popular by Peter Drucker and several other people about 30, 40 years ago. He coined the term knowledge economy in the early 50s. And then we coined a term 8 years ago called the creative molecular economy. We believe, not just the group that I'm working with and head up in terms of Feed of the Future, but other networks of people, that we're seeing the early stages of a birth of a whole new economy. We've always had entrepreneurs, haven't we? You go back to Alexander Graham Bell, you go back before that to the railroads, we've always had entrepreneurs in the Western culture. But what we haven't had, that I'm going to suggest to you, that's in the early stages of the period, is an economy where we're shifting the idea of an entrepreneur that is on the periphery of the economy. So over the next 20 years, we're going to have to, in fact, have the concept of entrepreneurism become the focus at the centerpiece. Here's one of the reasons I've come to believe that. And we're not prepared at this point in time. Community colleges become extremely important in preparing our citizens for that. There's a fellow out in the Da Vinci Institute named Thomas Fry that a year and a half ago started, when he went around the world, he started introducing the idea that he believes by the year 2030, and I never get caught up, you take the big picture, don't get caught up in the specifics, but be interested in what he's saying. By the year 2030, that there will be 2 billion, not million, billion jobs lost in the world. Why? Think about it. Because of the radical technologies that have been around and have been gestating for the last 20 to 30 years, like nanotechnology, biotechnology, 3D printing that originally was called rapid prototyping. All of these technologies are coming together. The cloud, the whole concept of advanced manufacturing, advanced computerization, is all coming together. So we as a democracy especially have a real challenge, but a wonderful historical opportunity to, as co-creators, prepare for a world that doesn't exist, that is in the process of being birthed and will be for the next 20 years. Therefore, the creative molecular economy, I'll suggest to you, will require certain things. That you will need to be open as a society and open to new ideas, and that was apparent in your panel this morning. need to be able to, in fact, connect totally disparate ideas between people, processes, and concepts and ideas. Need to, in fact, help build out into the community networks of people that are just interested in thinking about the future in different ways. Maybe the library can be connected to community college, can be connected to the economic development. And you create pods of people called 21st Century Neighborhood Academies, where just 4 or 5 people come together for coffee. Or you do it virtually. It doesn't matter how you do it. You do it multiple ways. And in doing so, you begin to see futures thinking out in the community in a distributed way. You distribute it out in the community, and you begin to get people talking about new ideas and new concepts. So as we continue to have certification, which will be very important in certain ways, we're going to need to see new ways of thinking out in the community. Transformational learning, which is, I think, that what you're doing here at TCC has got great opportunities, and also being connected to Wake Tech in Raleigh. And we just got a commitment from a community college up in Maryland, a community college in Washington, D.C., a network of community colleges all doing their own thing, but in turn collaborating together. That's why I told you the story of the idea of what I call the wheel of creativity that I took to Wake Tech. The ability to help each other think in new ways, help each other build new capacities in ourselves and other people in our organizations. So transformational learning, how do you identify a weak signal before it becomes a mini trend, before it becomes a trend? I'll give you 2 examples of that. 1991, too, the web that I brought up and told you the story, very few people knew about it. Only the people working on it. James Bernard-Lahr over in Switzerland, who was a Brit at CERN. China, back in the early 90s. Nobody paid much attention to China. Look at China now in terms of economics, in terms of what they're doing in world geopolitics. The idea of Ebola. Nobody had really heard or paid any attention to the viruses at the beginning. And therefore, this idea of being interdependent is going to impact us in so many different ways that the ability to, in effect, infuse in our citizens and our leaders and ourselves, so we got to learn from each other. And that's going to be a constant process. It's going to be a constant approach, and it really is a great opportunity. So transformational learning has all kinds of opportunities. And there's a chapter in the book that Neil and I wrote that you may be interested in reading, because there are 47 ideas that relate to transformational learning. How do you connect totally disparate ideas? How do you up-learn? How do you think and operate at a higher level of complexity, as opposed to just trying to go back and make everything simple and one-factor thinking, as I call it? It's not going to happen. It may happen in a small way in times, but overall, we're going to see an increasing complexity we're going to have to deal with. Mobile collaborative governance, now we begin to really move through this in a fast way. Mobile collaborative governance, the idea is, and I'm going to give you my own personal opinion. I noticed on TV today that they had a survey before I came over here that 82% of the people aren't particularly pleased. They used a much stronger word than that. Aren't particularly pleased with what's happening politically. I'm going to suggest to you that it could have been anticipated. Now, I was going to wait and give this as my last comment, but I'm going to change it because I'm watching the crowd as I do this. I'm going to suggest to you that what's happening in all of our institutions was anticipated in 2012 by the Global Economic Forum in Davos, and many of the political leaders and economic leaders from throughout the world come together. And they had a global risk report in 2012, and it was all built around the idea of we're going to have to reconceptualize, not just reform, not just rethink. We're going to have to reconceptualize all of our institutions in our culture. So I think what we're seeing from an educational standpoint, from a political standpoint, from an economic development standpoint that I've been so involved with over the years, I think it's it's similar, I'll use a metaphor. It's like a star that blows up at its death spiral. I'm going to suggest to you that the industrial age is having its death spiral and has been for 20 years. And that we're moving into a new type of economy and society and civilization that's not fully formed, and it's going to take all of us working in collaboration together and using our good thoughts and our ideas and listening to. I was 52 before I even learned how to listen. I now am easy to admit that. I don't know if any of y'all can identify with that or not, but I wanted to say what I wanted to say. That was my insecurity. So the ability to be able to listen is one of those precursors to be able to connect. And the ability to connect is going to be at the base of continuous innovation. We have continuous improvement, make things better that already existed. We have continuous innovation, give you an example of that, idea spaces that have ideas that are put together a different way, but they already exist. The game Wii that you've played, many years ago, 10, 15 years ago, a group of Japanese engineers spent 5 years taking the principles of an accelerator in a car and a video game. The principles of a video game, they mashed them up, as they called it, mashed up, and out of that came the game Wii. Well, that's going to lead into continuous transformation. Ideas and knowledge that's emerging that very few people even know about now, and that back in 2000, there were a group of futurists that got together and said, we predict that by the year 2020, that 40% of all of the technologies that exist won't have been a part of our world or our economy in the year 2000. Now, I don't ever get caught up in this, I say, in specifics, but I think that that's pretty close if you think about it. And so we're in an era where being comfortable in our comfort levels is something we're going to have to relax with and get outside our comfort levels. That's why I said I had no truth left in my body when I started this. So mobile collaborative governance, getting at the idea with smartphones, we can have decisions made by a civilization or a society or community or an organization. We can have them made at any time. We don't have to get people together. Do we have the methodologies of doing that and the leadership capacities? No, we don't. But we're working on it. And so therefore I'll suggest to you that if this is of interest to you, then you can be one of those places with other places in other states that are research and development areas that can help test out ideas, see what works, doesn't work, and share with each other. This is related to, pH stands for, we had a chemistry professor who's still in here, obviously basicity or acidity, but we used it as just a play on words of preventive health. We're moving to an age where we need to have systems of preventive health care. And some of us are working on this idea in different communities. Master capacity building. So now I'm going to just give you some of the ideas of a master capacity building. I got 7 minutes, haven't I? Okay? It's unusual for me to get it out. Okay. All right. But in any event, the master capacity builder, there are two types of leaders, we believe. There's a traditional project leader that's a strategic planner, still be needed, that will specifically deal with concrete outcomes, best practices, being able to hold people accountable. That's going to be the same, that's going to be the case. But that was developed during an age of the industrial age where in effect everything was standardized. Now we're going to need a new type of planning, as I mentioned, and therefore a new type of leader. And this leader is going to play a different role with a different set of skills. Both will be needed, and sometimes you'll interchange, sometimes you'll move in and out. It's going to be totally adaptable. And this leader is going to help build capacities in ourselves and others to be able to build networks, to build ecosystems, to introduce where's an access point. How about a dialogue that we can have so a new idea can emerge from that? Different set of skills that a traditional leader has, at least the way I was taught. So I want to give you just sort of some of the criteria, some of the ideas that relate to that. We call the original traditional leadership project leadership, and you're still going to need that. But you're also going to need, in parallel to that, master capacity builders as we shift and help people shift into new paradigms of thinking. Notice how all this ties back into those quotes? Master capacity builder capabilities. I got 2 slides here. I like this software. Do any of y'all use this kind of software? Okay. And so the idea, isn't it interesting that the term ideas is the thing that predominates that? We're in an age of need for new ideas. And not just ideas that have been around for a long time to make them efficient, but to be co-creative, to develop new ideas. And you can see the word innovation, create, encourage, give. Last weekend I was in a little community in North Carolina, Conover, which is 8,300, which is absolutely doing some fascinating things. And we're building a network of small communities in different states to collaborate with one another, under 25,000, to help learn how to introduce into that kind of culture that usually is very strongly defined, the ideas of thinking about the future differently. And so a community at Crestline in Ohio of 5,000, Conover, 8,300, another one out in Norfolk, Nebraska, Johnny Carson's old hometown of 4,000 that I worked out there for 13 years. We're going to build a network. And the thing that was really interesting to me was I brought a group of our Davidson class of 64 up there to Conover for our retreat that we have every 4 months. And the fellow that was the city manager was the host. And what he introduced with a fellow named Dan St. Louis, who was the economic developer at the community college, notice the connection I'm always making with community college. They introduced this concept and idea that starting 3 years ago, they were seeing a lot of this kind of thinking in their own community college, as well as in their council. And they would connect with people anywhere in the world and say, would you be willing to talk about this? Well, word got around after 2 or 3 years that this little community of Conover, North Carolina, was doing something very different. And the thing that impressed me that ties into what I heard in the panel today was that when the city manager and the economic developer, or the fellow at the community college, got up and told them what was going on, they had a map. And it was almost like a map of the internet, where you have nodes, and you know they originally thought that the internet was going to be randomly distributed in terms of websites, but they found out that wasn't the case. It's called the power law distribution, whereby if you get on YouTube or if you get on Amazon or whatever, that's an example of those websites. Same thing I saw analogously up in there, and what he was showing us is all the people that they were connected with in the northeast part of America, over in Singapore, wherever, that had evolved over the last 4 or 5 years. And the reason that they were being so successful is because they tried to get credit for nothing. And they shared everything. And that is a very different way than when I was in the textile industry, and our textile firms didn't share anything with each other. We were competitive, right? That's the way you did that. Well, in the future, it's going to be how do we collaborate, share, find ways to brand ourselves, because we are the originators, as you are out here, of certain ideas, and word gets around, and people want to find out what's going on. It's a new approach also to how economic development can happen. All right? So, bring attention to the need to reconceptualize our institutions for a constant changing society, model a new approach to prepare for the future, build capacities for transformation. Well, one of those capacities is thinking about building parallel processes as you try to make efficient what you have as policies for the moment and for the next 3 to 5 years. At the same time, that's the whole idea of strategic planning and strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But in parallel to that, begin to bring core groups together of all kinds. And in turn, have them begin to talk to each other and dialogue and connect with people both within your area and also anywhere in the world, so that you can have a whole new approach we call DICE: design, identify, connect, and then watch what emerges from that dialogue, from those interactions that you have with people, organizations, and communities. It's a whole different approach, but it's in the process of evolving, and people are showing how this is going to be needed to be adapted. All right, so what are some of the capacity building skills? And notice if I've already mentioned them, I'll just sort of move down, but I will, since you can't see this up there, I will tell you what the STAR's about. Identify emerging weak signals. I've already mentioned that. Utilize futures-generated dialogue to develop a futures context. Again, that's what you're doing so well here, as well as other people begin to realize we can get people together and debate each other. I don't debate anybody anymore. As soon as that I have the knowledge or I have the answer. At the same time, discussion uses statements, and usually you use statements and don't necessarily get connections using statements, because you're still stating what you think. Not that that's not important, it is important. But if you combine that with questions and have a dialogue with people, then at least something will begin to emerge that you could not anticipate when you started the dialogue. And that's going to be important for the future in terms of creating new ideas, projects, products, services, whatever. But you can dialogue around increasingly obsolete ideas. So I'm going to suggest you need futures generative dialogue, where you think about what the emerging weak signals are, talk about issues within that context, and then think about, well, what is it that we can do to seed a new idea in our own community, whether it be in this college or whether it be in your community or otherwise. So consider emerging issues within a futures context. Here are several other capacity building skills. Become a connected listener. Listen and affirm. And yes. In other words, anytime the word no or anytime I use the word but, I stop myself because it separates knowledge, it separates ideas, it separates people. So how do we connect each other? By using new approaches and new ideas and new methodologies. How do we affirm? Remember I said if it's a 1% or 10% or 100%, then I'll agree and find a way to agree and find a way to help build and co-create something. Utilize families of questions. If you're ever interested in this, I'll send you 14 families of questions. A type of question that puts a new idea on the table. I used to try to, in effect, put my ideas out. Now I realize that I was trying to dominate, so people would say, hey, what a good leader you are. Well, that still happens. And so there are questions that you can ask to shift over and have people not dominate conversations. And so there are a whole series of families of questions that can be asked. Always affirm, but make sure it's authentic. If I don't believe in what somebody said, I'm not going to, just for the purposes of connecting with them, or we use a term in the South called soaping. Have you ever heard soaping? And it doesn't mean taking a shower, by the way. It just means the fact of making the other person feel good, but not necessarily saying how you feel, just for the purposes of doing that. So it's got to be authentic. Look for access points. If it's a dialogue, if somebody says something, introduce an idea by the form of a question. If it's an access point in designing a new process in a community to build a connection, to get citizens to think about the future differently, you'll find certain people and certain organizations that will, in effect, be natural access points to starting that and to seeding that. So there are all kinds of things that can be done in looking for access points. So you see ideas, you wait till things happen, and then see what connections you will have. Building networks and ecosystems. We have a new idea that we're calling creative innovation ecosystems. And the idea is that anybody that's interested in a concept, and I'll go into it because I've got it up here. Anybody, how many of y'all have heard the term neo-narrative?
Every day.
I always appreciate that. I have about $5 left in my wallet. I'm going to give you my $5 for talking. Okay? But the whole idea here, this is a term coined by an orthopedic surgeon up in Connecticut. And we waited to use it because, in effect, it's a framework term. Neo-narrative for adaptive education. Anybody want to guess what the term neo-narrative is by putting the three words together? New, right? New narrative, right? New narrative leading into a new paradigm of thinking. Now, I'll suggest to you that somebody will say, well, we don't want to use jargon. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. Or somebody will say, use words that I can understand. Or tell me something practical. You ever thought about everything we do today? If you go back far enough, it never was practical. You ever thought about the fact that if you use a term and go back to the internet, and you go back to 1965, the word internet wasn't in the language? And so we need new terms if it's a new idea. And one of the things that people will resist, because people will in effect have 4 stages of transformation as well as organizations. Resistance, You ever read something and just gone to yourself? Aha, I see what you're talking about. That's the 3rd stage. Don't necessarily agree with you, but I see what you're talking about. 4th stage is then it becomes a part of how you see the world differently. Well, that's what you're doing such a fine job out here laying the seeds for in terms of Tarrant County College as well as other things that I heard today. Keep up that good work if you would. All right, so this term, neo-narrative for adaptive education, that phrase was coined to combine 3 ideas. 1, a Canadian thinker, an educator, that is evolving a concept, if you will, a new theory for digital age education called connectivism. Everything connects. How do you connect ideas, people, and processes? How do you connect technologies? What kind of possible impacts might they have? Then, in turn, all the 47 key ideas of transformational learning. In other words, connectivism is the why, the theory. Transformational learning, the whole new concepts of using and applying the what, if you will, and then you have Future Forward College. that we're delighted that PCC is such an important part and helped originate the idea of the Future Forward College with the Wake Tech in Raleigh, and now other colleges, as I mentioned, are coming on stream. And so therefore, then the Future Forward College gets at the how-to. How do you leave the seeds for a whole new way of thinking? How do you, in effect, develop the capacities so that faculty members are emerging new ideas at all kinds of times? How do you connect into the community in new ways? You're already doing a lot of this, and I want to encourage you to do more of it and connect with other people even outside your group. All right, so here's the second to last, for those of you who wondered when you're going to get dessert. All right, anybody recognize? Well, he's the founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman. You may have seen him on Fareed Zakaria about 2 months ago. Very intelligent person, wonderful human being. Here are 3 of his concepts that I think are appropriate. You have to be constantly reinventing yourself and investing in the future. Don't stand still. Everything in life has some risk. If you try to stay in comfort levels, then in turn, not only are you not preparing for the future, but you're actually doing the opposite of what you need to do. So I'm going to suggest to you, as individuals, as we've done for 200 years, we need each other. Because there's so much risk that comes about, no matter what we do in this day and time, that we need to collaborate with each other. And your network of people who want to help you and you want to help them, that's really powerful. So here's my last slide. Ever watch Saturday Night Live? I thought I would end with giving you a quote from a person that was equivalent to Albert Einstein and some of these other people that I mentioned. Amy Poehler. Okay? I found this. I just happened to be going through some of the things, and I found this. And Amy Poehler, of course, is a comedian. She's also was a part of Saturday Night Live for years. And I was just struck by, if Amy Poehler sees what y'all were doing on the panel today is important, then if Saturday Night Live is picking it up as a cultural entity, then we better pay attention to it. As you navigate through the rest of your life, be open to collaboration. Other people and other people's ideas are often better than your own. Find a group of people who challenge and inspire you. Spend a lot of time with them, and it will change your life. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to commend you on what you're doing out here. You are taking these principles and these ideas. You're working with each other, and I've watched over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years you begin to take the concepts and move them into the community and have it's not into the community, it's the fact that the community and the community college and economic development are all collaborating together to develop new ideas. So I wish you the best of luck. I know you will be successful. Don't get frustrated. This is not easy stuff. We're talking about a historical transformation. But you talk about it being worthwhile. If you want to get on your deathbed like I'm fairly close to, and you look back, not tomorrow by the way, folks, I'm looking at 10 years, right? And you look back, you can play all the tennis and golf you want to. It's the grandchildren. The reason our Davidson group are coming together, we're concerned about what's happening for our grandchildren. We're also concerned that we're not asking the right questions many times. Yes, there are plenty of right questions that are being asked, and I think you out here are one of those groups. So I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it's been to come back. I would be glad to help any of you, connect you with anybody that I know beyond North Carolina. In any way you would like to, and please keep up what you're doing here. And understand that we are in a time of history where if we focus on, and this is just my opinion, if we focus only on ourselves, for the first time, self-interest and the good of the community is one. It's always been important. But now, both are so connected that we're not going to be able to be vital and sustainable for the future in the way we can do unless we realize of the connections we can have with each other and people elsewhere. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, especially for inviting me back. Oh, good. I'm sorry. Any of you have any questions? I promise you I'll answer them within at least 25 or 30 minutes. You thought I was going to say 1 minute, didn't you? The book, it's in the book. Okay, the 14 questions in the first chapter, I mean the 14, it's in the third chapter of the book. Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to stay, well, I got to leave at 1:30. So I'll be glad, if you want, I'll give you my card, we can talk over the phone, I do it all the time. Other questions? See, I can, that took me 18 seconds. Any other questions, if you have? Okay, well, thank you. Have a great week, and as long as your teams in Texas don't beat our North Carolina teams, I'll still have good feelings about coming out here.
All right, thank you so much, Rick, and please put your hands together again for I'd like to invite Vicki Truitt, the chair of our Northeast Leadership Forum Board, to offer closing comment for you. And again, I want to thank you all for being here. Some of Rick's books are on the table. Those are a gift to you. Please take those and enjoy those. Maybe if you can catch a minute, he'll sign the book for you. I have a couple of extra copies if anyone would really like that. And Vicki, for our closing comments.
Well, Dr. Goodwin, first of all, thank you and all of the organizers of today's event for hosting a wonderful, informative, fun event. Thank you and your team. And TCC for everything you do throughout Tarrant County. We appreciate you. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking your time, your valuable time, to be with us today. And I hope that you've learned something helpful to you and will be useful in your life, and that you will go out and share what you've learned today and encourage more people to get involved in their community, collaborate, and move our society forward, move our region forward. And I appreciate you all very, very much. Oh, okay, and Carolyn says that the centerpiece is on the table. Y'all figure out which one of you is going to take it with you. Is there anything else? Dr. Goodwin? Larry Darledge, thank you for your continued support of Northeast Leadership Forum and of the business conference. And Dr. Goodwin, again, thank you so very much. We are adjourned.